Welcome to Dating DeJa Vu, the podcast where we talk about your patterns, your pitfalls, and your personal growth in modern dating. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, marriage and family therapist and dating and relationship expert. In today's episode, we are talking your reality TV couples and relationships in our second DeJa View episode. In this episode, we are going to touch on Shep and Sienna's relationship from Southern Charm. We're going to talk about Joe Bradley and Maddie Reese's relationship on Southern Hospitality, and Jesse Solomon and Lexi's relationship on Summer House. So if your dating and relationship love life has looked a little bit of the same over and over again, it might be DeJa Vu, but it also might be you. So let's figure it out together. What's up, DeJa crew? Welcome to our second DeJa View episode where I break down reality TV. I know I was going to talk about Love is Blind, but honestly, it's such a boring episode, but I'll finish them today and I will give you my synopsis on it. But in these episodes, first, I want to say I don't know these people. All I'm doing is basing this off of what I'm seeing in the edit. I'm sure they're all lovely humans. However, I think that as listeners, you can learn from their behaviors, whether those behaviors were staged or not, because what I pull out of these episodes are the good, bad, and ugly when it comes to modern dating and relationships. And so I think that everyone can learn because we oftentimes will repeat or mimic similar patterns, and maybe they are not working for you and keeping you stuck in the same type of relationships. So the first one I want to talk about is Shep Rose and his girlfriend Sienna from Southern Charm. So for those of you who are not up to date, Shep has had his slew of different relationships where ultimately he presented very emotionally distant. He kind of has, as they say on the show, like Peter Pan syndrome, never wanting to grow up. I believe he's in his early to mid 30s or 40s, excuse me. And Sienna, who is, I believe, Miss Bahama, she is very young. She's very beautiful. But they met in the Bahamas. They, what it sounds like, had a whirlwind of a relationship. And as a kind of fuckboy who hasn't really, I shouldn't say that. He's been a serial monogamist, but doing it in a way that doesn't allow for him to be emotionally involved with these women and looking at these women long term. And his last long-term girlfriend, Taylor, sounds like he also cheated on her as well. So some infidelity and being unfaithful. And we see him kind of flip the script. We have never seen him be in a relationship like he is with Sienna. And I think that since we just talked about the love addict and love avoidant cycle, this is a clear indication of being out avoided. Now, I've explained that that's happened to me before. So I genuinely show up as a love avoidant. I show up in relationships out of a need instead of really seeking love because I've struggled with really feeling safe and secure. Now, obviously, I've done my own work and have then attracted my husband to me, but I had to do my own work to why I kept attracting my fixer-uppers. Now, with Shep, he hasn't necessarily had fixer-uppers per se, but again, he presents very avoidant, like he gets close and then runs away or sabotages, right? So he's also kind of a people pleaser. So he oftentimes would show up in a way that would make the girl want to break up with him, either cheating or being drunk or whatever that looks like, just being mean. There was one episode where he literally called Taylor, I forgot what are you stupid idiot or you're so fucking stupid, something really upfront, direct in front of everyone. And that behavior obviously led to their demise. Now with Sienna, though, this beautiful beauty queen, he has, again, flipped the script. He is not showing up in this kind of detached, kind of, what we would say is mysterious way. He is kind of wearing his heart on his sleeve, so much so that he really lacks boundaries and is not focusing on facts. He's focusing on the fantasy, which is our love addict. So in the season, we see him introduce her to the friends. She is questionable why she's in this relationship because she talks about her grandmother being a big fan of the show. There is some speculation that she might be trying to get on the show, right? And he just happened to be the target. Now, she did say she connected with another cast member, but it sounds like it was just like, hey, hello. And for the first month, I believe he was in the Bahamas with her and he met her family and it was they were very close and he flew her out to Charleston. And in this last few episodes, they're in the Bahamas to go see her, right? So I don't know about you, but if I'm in a long distance relationship, I'm going to be so excited to see my person, right? Especially all of his friends are coming. And let's just put this out there. Say she was trying to get on the show. She did not present well because you would think she would be in the shit all the time unless she was trying to become a storyline. Now that's another conversation. But if I'm in a long distance relationship, I'm thinking I'm going to be at the hotel with them. I'm going to do all the activities with them, so on and so forth. When she shows up, it is incredibly awkward. So much so that Craig Conover says, like, I have a read of people and like she doesn't like him. And even prior to that, they weren't really talking very much. When they would talk, she'd breadcrumb him. And when he's even like at the airport, he's trying to contact her and be like, hey, we're here. Instead of her, she should be at the airport, right? Like that's how someone should show up for you, especially when we're doing this long distance thing. Like, I mean, I'll come get you at the airport, right? Or I'll be at the hotel. I'm already there, right? So in this episode, she comes in, it's just kind of like, hey, hi. It almost felt like a second or third date where we're meeting the friends. It's still fresh, it's still new, but he's told everyone, his friends and everyone watching, that they've said I love you to each other like 6 weeks into their relationship. And he is, obsessed with her and they're great and da 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 da. But what we're seeing, the facts, is this woman is not into him at all. She's kind of giving side hug. It's not like, oh, hey, baby, that real excitement when you see your person, who you haven't seen in a while. And throughout the episode, she just keeps kind of creating distance, right? So think of the avoidant. When the love addict tends like kind of clings and pushes, the love avoidant pulls. So you'll see like he has these very deep conversations with her every time they're together. And I don't see this as much male female. I see this female male where they're like, what are you thinking? Like, how do you feel about us? And they're constantly having that conversation because it's a reassurance that they need. And he was very much seeking that and she wasn't giving it to him. So fast forward in the episode, he sends her this message. Good morning, Sienna. Listen, I love seeing you and no one else. No one, but I'm not going to try to convince someone they love me for 3 days, especially when I know deep down they do. Here's hoping you understand my feelings and exalt them. I just don't feel this way ever. I know that you agree, and I feel a lot of what I do because I've heard it from your perfect little freckled lips. And those around us can say and think what they will, but we will have the last laugh and we'll have love, laughter, and everything that matters. Okay, my TED Talk is over. He sent this after her creating distance, fact, not creating distance physically while he's in her hometown, not contacting him, kind of even giving him the bit of like, I need to step back vibes. And what I don't like about this message is he's trying to tell her how she feels when that is a part of his fantasy. This is a fantasy he's making up. And she factually is showing distance and he's not picking up on it. He's pushing even more. This is after multiple instances of her pulling away. And I see this all the time. It's like, read the fucking room. They're not that into you, right? Or maybe they are into you, but you're pressing too hard and you are pushing them away, right? Because maybe, yes, there's two things that happened here. It sounds like it was this kind of love bombing in the beginning, which she is probably equally as guilty of. And then once they got too close, she retreated. And then he was like, wait, what's happening? I mean, you see this man who is a grown man get like physically overwhelmed. I mean, the anxiety that he was having over this, like it was ruining his trip. And he then sends this. She then doesn't show up to this boating activity. She says, we need to talk about this text. And finally, they sit down and she admits, like, I wasn't in love with you. I may have said I love you, but I wasn't in love with you. And, it's a classic case of when the script is flipped, where you can be a love avoidant until you meet someone who out avoids you, and you can very much swing to the love addict. What I didn't mention in that episode is you can be different aspects of you could be a love avoidant with one person and a love addict with another, which I have experienced one time in my life where I was the addict. And it goes back to everything I talk about of focusing on the facts instead of the fantasy. Because if he would have sat down and like reality checked himself, he would have realized, like, what am I doing? I'm telling this woman that this is how he wants her to feel, but how she's displaying her feelings is not the same. And sitting and writing it down and being like, man, like I'm really making up this story that she's that into me and she's not. And I need to have boundaries around my heart, because if I keep going in the way I'm going, I'm going to crash and burn, which ultimately he did. Now he's very resilient and he'll rebound just fine. But it really is a good example of that flip that happens and why we need to take ourselves out of the fantasy, bring ourselves down from La La Land, really focus on what is going on. And the hard part about that is you also have to create a boundary that says, this is what's happening, but it's not something against me. And that's why a lot of people can't look at the facts, because they then take those facts and make them something wrong with them, right? So, oh, I'm not good enough. No one will ever love me. This happens to me all the time. And that's not necessarily true or false, right? It's just is. This isn't your person. And so if you're someone feeling like you're putting way too much effort and you're trying to love the person into loving you, we need to step back. We need to get out of the fantasy, write down what's actually happening, and then figure out how to proceed so that you're protecting yourself. You ultimately should start, or the goal is to start having so much love for you that you don't get hurt by others. But most likely, a lot of times when people engage in such behavior, they don't know how to do that. So when we can get curious of like what's actually happening, have courage to sit down and kind of check ourselves in a calm manner, we connect back to us. And when we can connect back to us, we're going to make the right decision for us, not them. And so that is number one. Number two, I'm going to do the two that are kind of cringe and then the one that I really love. I want to talk about Jesse Solomon and Lexi on Summer House. Excuse me. Now, for those who don't know, Jesse Solomon came into Summer House last season. He is kind of this playboy, attractive guy, very tall, good style, like charismatic, great smile, like all the wonderful things. And Lexi is this beautiful girl. She's absolutely stunning, bubbly personality, all of the things. Instantaneously, he walks into the house and it's almost like they like licked each other and were like, mine, right? And I just see, you could already see the love bomb kind of going off. So the first weekend, they're spending all of their time together. It's very boundaryless. There's no like get to know you phase. I think within the first week, he met her parents and they had the conversation about being exclusive. She then dropped the bomb that she's very jealous. She doesn't like to share. And he's like, whoa, 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 what did I get myself into? Now, he's still trying to figure out how to have this conversation with her and asks the other women in the group. And they give him some advice, but this is the classic case of shiny object syndrome. And that shiny object, that beautiful girl, you're thinking with the wrong brain, right? So you're just going for it. I mean, he asks her, like, are we going to share a bedroom next weekend? Indicating, being sexual. And she's just like, I don't know. I don't want to share you with other people. And I mean, the way that they talk even is as if they've been together for a very long time. And all I see here is disaster. I see absolute disaster because it is that big spark, that intensity from the beginning. And they're hugging each other and loving each other and doing all these things together. He's coming back early to be with her, which would be all fine and dandy if we were a couple months into this. We are one weekend into this, now 2. And now, as he's getting to know her, he's now putting himself in a position that is, I almost feel like it's almost like impossible for him to not look like the asshole, right? Because he didn't take the time to be like, hey, like, let's cool our jets, let's slow down. It's almost like too far gone for him to do that. But now she's like, I'm super jealous, this, and that. And Jesse Solomon, if you guys remember, like, likes to comment on the other girl's posts, and he like goes hard in the paint when he comments. He likes to flirt with Sierra and Paige. I mean, he flirted with Paige the first time he saw her, even though he knew that she had a boyfriend, and like they acknowledged that in the episode. And that's just his personality. And he said, like, I'm willing to change for Lexi, for the better, but I'm not going to change everything about myself. Now, even that comment to me is kind of like, ugh, what are you talking about? You don't know anything about this woman, and you're willing to change your character for her. And again, I see this all the time. It's almost as if 2 love addicts got together, and it's just like intense until the fantasy or bubble is burst. And now he's like, whoa, bubble burst. We haven't seen her burst of her bubble yet. But I also know that in the teaser, she starts getting upset with Sierra because he sat next to her, I believe at the beach, which is where they left off in the last episode. And it really gives a platform for the conversation about boundaries when we're dating initially. We should be dating other people initially. We should be open about that. We should be having conversations so I like to think of it the 3-3-3-3-3 method. We are messaging, for 3 days until we get the phone number. If we go more than 3 days, you're just a pen pal. 3 days, get the phone number. After like 3 conversations, ask for the date. After 3 dates, you decide, am I willing to move forward? And we're always dating 3 people at the same time until we decide to be exclusive. Did not make that up myself. I had a hairstylist. I don't remember where she was. And my husband and I traveled the country a couple of years ago, and she told me that, and I was like, brilliant. I'm using that. And so the boundaries are, listen, I really think you're beautiful. I want to get to know you. I want you to know I am dating other people. That is huge for you to be open with that. Like, do not, I think Emerald said it. Like, I just am open and I tell everyone I'm in other relationships. Now he's a bit extreme, but if he's open and honest and people are okay with it, do your thing. But it seemed like how Jesse showed up was kind of this knight in shining armor. I'm ready for this relationship. I want you and only you, and I don't know a lick about you. And Lexi too, right? And she said, like, I love with my whole heart. I'd rather get hurt than, be cautious, which, I mean, if that's your thing, sure, that's fine. But then you have to also give that same grace to the other person, right? So if they're supposed to accept you as this kind of heart on your sleeve, then you have to accept them as they are too. But back to the boundaries, it's really, I think you're beautiful or handsome. I really want to get to know you. I know this is kind of awkward because we're in the same house. I will be going out and meeting other people. Are you okay with that? Right? Again, I talk about this all the time about having communication and being open with your communication is so important. And that didn't happen until a week later. Now, yes, when you're living in a house with someone, you're 3 days together, then you have a date in the city. we'll call it 4 dates at that point. But now a week in, she's like, I'm jealous. I don't like to share. And now he's like, fuck, what did I get myself into? So we'll see how it plays out. Again, just a good lesson in boundaries and being careful with that intensity, right? If that intensity is not also equaling communication and curiosity and understanding character, we have a problem there because we're just, I mean, really, let's just call it as it is. They are in lust. They're beautiful people who want to be, each other's person, but did it in the wrong way. So we'll see how it plays out. Okay. Last one I'm going to talk about is another one about boundaries, but in a positive way. My girl, Maddie Reese on Southern Hospitality and Joe Bradley. So for those of you who don't watch, Joe Bradley and Maddie have been best friends for 4 years. And over this past year, decided to date because he did tell her a couple, I don't know, seasons ago. I remember what season it was that he was interested in her and he loved her. She was dating this other man. He ended up not being a great person and boom, here they are together. Now, because Joe has had this crush on Maddie for so long, he's loved her, as he said, for so long that he feels like he's ready to just boom, like go get married. And they do this mock marriage in Vegas. And Maddie, now the thing about Maddie that I love, she is sober. I believe it's 10 years. So that tells me a little bit about her. She has a little bit more self-awareness, probably has done a lot of therapy or support groups or whatever that looks like, which is just not everyone who does that is going to be healthy in a relationship, but it does give me the vibe that she understands like emotional boundaries and, awareness of self, because it takes a lot to become sober, right? And also if you do it in the right way, which we talked about with Carl, you are not using relationships as another addiction. And Joe asked her to like move in together, and he wants to be married one day and have children. And she feels the same way, but she's not ready. And she loves living with her girlfriend and she loves living where she lives, even though it is further from Charleston. And she said, no, I'm not ready for that. If you keep pushing it on me, it's going to push me away. And I thought it was such a beautiful conversation with just honesty. Now, it wasn't what Joe wanted to hear. And that's okay. Because what ended up happening is he, because he loves her, said, okay, I would rather, instead of getting engaged now and having an engagement for 5 years, I would rather wait 2 years and get engaged then and get married soon thereafter. He really understood, like, at the end of the day, I want to be with this woman and I get to be with her each day. We'll make this work. I want to respect her boundaries, but also she's not like against this future with him. He just was moving a little bit quicker than she was, and he was able to compromise because ultimately he just wants to be with her. And they're still together and they seem very supportive of each other. It was a great, it's basically everything I talk about here, being open, communicating. Now, I mean, could the communication, they weren't like, they were arguing, but they weren't like being mean to each other or any of the four horsemen that we talked about. If you did not listen to that episode, it's the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is the way we argue that ends up ending our relationships. And it had some tension and there was differences, but that open communication and being able to say, I understand that's where you are. That's not where I'm at right now. She wasn't afraid that he was going to leave her. I can't say that. I can't speak for that. But there was no like, how women will just hold back, even men hold back what they want because they're afraid if they speak their truth that other person's going to leave. Whereas she was almost prepared for, she was like, this is where I'm at. And, not take it or leave it. That's the lack of a better term, but this is where I'm at. And I hope that you can respect that. And ultimately he did. And he knew if I keep pushing, she's going to pull away. I'm going to lose her. And that to me was huge. Now we'll see, because we saw this with Paige and Craig too, where he pushed and pushed and she pulled and pulled. She did set very clear boundaries, but I feel like she also gave some mixed messages where At least that's what we see on the show. Paige, I love you. But Maddie was very clear and direct, and I think that ultimately that was a really healthy conversation. So if you want to watch that episode, I ask you to go back to it. Do not be afraid to speak your truth. Do not be afraid to hurt others' feelings, because if you're afraid to hurt others' feelings, all you're doing is saying F you to your own. And if at the end of the day, you speak your truth and that person leaves, then that's a them problem. But like in this situation, she spoke her truth. Her boyfriend respects her. He loves her. He wants to be with her. He recognizes and wants to respect those boundaries. And ultimately he did. And they seem to be doing just fine, but we'll see. There was some like drama on the reunion. So that is it for today for our DeJa View. If you guys want me to watch any sort of episodes of anything and, you know, critique the relationships, you just put it in the comments. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribing or following us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am a new podcast. I would love to get more exposure. So the more that you can share this with other people, give us a 5-star rating and review, and subscribe, the better the algorithm likes it. So I would appreciate that very much. And if you haven't already, we also have our Instagram and TikTok at Dating DeJa Vu Podcasts. And that is it today. Remember, it might be DeJa Vu, but it also might be you. Goodbye.